Good afternoon and welcome to today's Digital Dealer webinar. Today's webinar is sponsored by Conversica and is titled, Do You Know Your Blind Spots with Internet Leads? Today's webinar presenters are John Ruble, Director of Sales, and Helena Chen, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Conversica. This webinar will run approximately 1 hour with a question and answer session at the end. Please welcome John and Helena.
Hi there. Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think I can speak for the both of us when I say that we are very excited to be here and hope that you gain some great insights into the blind spots with your internet leads and that you walk away with some actionable steps on how you can improve on lead follow-up and engagement. So to get started, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. If we can go ahead and go to our first poll question. Can you please tell us if you are A, the owner, general manager, general sales manager or sales manager, a BDC manager, or other? And we'll just give you a few minutes to answer that. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and close that poll. And it looks like 11% of you are general managers. Another 11% are general sales manager or sales managers. And 33% are BDC managers, with the majority of you, the 44%, are others. Okay, well, welcome. Thank you again for being here. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So Conversica has been in the business of lead follow-up for a long time, and we've actually broken down what constitutes effective lead follow-up into 4 elements. And we call these the 4 Ps. There's persistence, which is how many contact attempts does your dealership make to reach a lead? There's promptness, so once that lead comes in, how quickly do you respond to it? And not just with an autoresponder email, but an actual customized response. And that brings us to our 3rd P, personalization. Are you answering each inquiry with a personalized response? Do you mention the person by name or refer to the specific make and model that the lead is inquiring about? And lastly, performance. Do you know if your emails are getting into the lead's inbox or are they landing in the spam folder? Okay, next slide. So for 3 years now, we've been conducting a study on lead follow-up. And what we do is we secret shop companies across the U.S. And for last year, we did 866 companies. And we gauge how well they respond to leads. So what we found was that for last year, approximately 4 out of 10 companies don't respond at all. And I think that's just really shocking that there are leads that are taking the time out of their day, they're submitting an inquiry, and they're expressing interest in your service or product, and the company's not responding. They're just leaving money on the table. And of the companies that are responding, we're seeing that more than half are giving up after just 1 or 2 attempts. Okay, next slide. But there is some good news. So of the 13 industries that we studied, we found that auto sales and auto service performed the best. So 80% of auto service follow up with their leads, while a whopping 93% of auto sales follow up with theirs. Now, just because the auto industry is leading the way when it comes to lead follow-up, it doesn't mean that you should be resting on your laurels. If that was the case, this would be a very short webinar. but there's always room for improvement, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Next slide. Okay, so let's get into our first P, persistence. Now, how many times should you be reaching out to your lead? Our studies show that it takes 8 to 12 tries just to reach a prospect by phone. And this is before the conversation even gets started. This is just to get a hold of them. And again, auto sales is outperforming all other industries, with 43% of you making at least 8 or more contact attempts. And auto service is not far behind, with 10% of you getting an A grade. But if we take a look at those of you who are getting a D grade, which is just making 1 or 2 contact attempts, we're seeing that 20% of auto sales and 68% of auto service is getting a D. So it's clear that there needs to be some kind of change with regard to the number of tries that you're making to engage your leads. Next slide. All right, moving on to our next P, promptness. How quickly should you be responding to your lead inquiries? So best practices research indicates that it should be within 5 minutes. And this makes sense when you think about it, because when a lead submits an inquiry, that's when they're on their computer or their tablet or on their phone. And that's when they're researching your product. So that's, it's top of mind. And, we live in a day and age where, it's all about instant gratification, where people expect an immediate answer to their questions. And if you're not providing that, they will get the information that they need elsewhere, or somebody else will provide it for them. Now, if we take a look at this graph, you can see that 28% of sales and 23% of service is responding within that 5-minute sweet spot. But this is actually a decline from the previous year, in which 49% in the auto industry got an A grade. So I'll get into what measures you can take to improve on this metric in just a moment. If we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so the next P, personalization. So when it comes to personalization, the auto industry is killing it. So personalization is about taking the time to create a response that nurtures a one-on-one relationship with a prospect. It's your way of letting them know that you're listening to their needs and you're acting accordingly in a very responsive way. And some elements that constitute a personal response includes, sending an email from an individual rather than, a company name like info@abcdealer.com. It's also about including a personal greeting where you're addressing that person's name and making them feel that this is a response that you created just for them. And it's also about, making a specific mention of the product so, they know that you're actually listening to what they're looking for. And for this element, you guys are doing a great job, so keep up the good work. All right. And now we come to our last P, performance. And what we found was that on average, 50% of business emails end up in a spam folder. So email providers are constantly working on their algorithms and they're improving their spam filters. So it's a challenge to get past them. And some simple steps that you can take to improve your chances of getting into the inbox is, one, to keep your emails brief. Just keep it to the point. What also helps is avoiding large amounts of graphics and including a large number of links, just maybe 1 or 2 links at most. And then lastly, for the subject line, don't use words that are going to trigger spam filters like free or money, or using all caps or exclamation marks, because those are sending red flags that this is a spam. Okay, so if we could go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was going to provide you with some specific steps that you could take to improve upon your lead response. And for persistence, the auto industry is making an average of 5 attempts. And we recommend that you actually increase this number to 11 attempts to actually contact and engage your lead. And this is the average number that dealerships that got an A grade are making. Next slide. And for promptness, the auto industry is taking an average of 3.3 hours to respond to their inquiries. And while best practices research shows that 5 minutes is the ideal response time, we know that it can be pretty near impossible for your sales reps to respond within that window. So we're recommending that dealerships aim for 17 minutes or less to get back to a lead and just really ensure that these leads aren't being undertouched. Okay, so that's just a quick summary of our findings. You can find the full report on sales effectiveness for the auto industry on our website, Conversica.com. And now we would like to transition from the findings in that study to the real world. And before I hand this discussion off to John, we have a second poll question to ask you. How long does your personal outreach extend? Is it less than 3 days, 3 to 7 days, 7 to 14 days, 14 to 30 days, or beyond 30 days?
And we want to be clear on what type of outreach this is. This is actual personal outreach, not automated emails from the CRM.
Good point, John.
Yep.
So we'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and answer that question. Okay, I think we can go ahead and close that second poll question out, and the results are, all right, this is interesting. So none of you respond less than 3 days. 25% of you respond in 3 to 7 days. 13% of you are in the 7 to 14 days window. 19% of you are 14 to 30 days. And 44%, the majority is beyond 30 days. All right.
So we're going to talk real world, what happens in the trenches at the dealership. Now, many of the blind spots that we're going to talk about on today's webinar, you may already be aware of. You may have tried to find some solutions, but the majority of them are going to require advanced technology to solve these blind spots. And the advanced technology that we're going to talk about today is artificial intelligence. We'll get more into that as the webinar progresses. The biggest issue that we see today or a blind spot, and again, many of you are aware of it, is spam. The internet providers have gotten really good at finding spam and doing a favor to their customers to eliminate it. But in the meantime, we're losing the ability to talk to our customers. So a lot of the outbound emails that dealerships are sending end up in the spam or promotions folder. And a big reason for that is a customer goes to a website or it's a third-party lead. They've never had interaction via email with your dealership. So the first attempt going out is really a cold email, and their internet provider has never seen your email address before or your IP address. So they're really critical of how they look at it to see if it's a spam email. That's challenge number one. What happens when your emails end up in the spam folder is you've got a customer that took the time to form fill. They're interested in a vehicle. You're interested in them as a lead. But if they never see your response to the lead, they think that you're not interested in them. And vice versa, your team is not getting a response back from the lead, so they think it was a bad lead. So it's almost like two ships passing in the night. Both are interested in each other, but they're not hooking up and having a conversation or engagement. What are the causes?
John, sorry to interrupt. Can you move the screen? It's still in the poll question.
Actually, looking at the blind spot number 1.
Oh, interesting. I think my screen is just showing the poll. Okay, all right.
Okay. So some of the causes, the big one is most of our CRMs that we use today are older CRMs. When they were designed, they weren't really designed to deliver email. In many cases, that was a bolt-on feature. And the other issue is because of that, you're sharing IP addresses with other dealerships that are using the same CRM. So if you've got another dealership on your IP address that is doing a terrible job with maybe mass email, bad content, a lot of links and graphics, it's affecting your deliverability. A lot of the content that is sent out has gotten better. We've gotten smarter about how to do it, but there's no real-time feedback. And we'll talk about how AI can actually learn from its outbound content and get better to get in the inbox. Some of those shared accounts that you have on the same IP address may have even been blacklisted. And the other thing, in auto, a lot of our outbound email campaigns are very similar to other dealers in our segment. So, the ISPs pick up on that. So we've got to get better. And again, we've got to use an advanced technology such as AI to move to the next level. The global spam rate, and this was a report done by Statista in this year, we've done better as an industry. 4 years ago, we were close to 71% spam rate. Even now, you're close to 50%, March of 2018, of outbound emails going into a spam box. That's pretty, it's an alarming stat when you figure out how much money you spend on marketing to convert a customer to a lead. The customer takes time to convert to a lead, and then you never engage them because they never see your emails. So how do we solve this? Let's talk about kind of a change also on how people are reading emails. So in automotive, if you look at mobile open rate in the second column, they're opening our emails almost at a rate of 70% on their mobile device. Think about that. 7 out of 10 are opening it on their phone. So when we look at the content that we send out, we need to kind of think about, is this going to look good on a mobile device? And also from a spam standpoint, what kind of content are we sending?
Oh, John, sorry to interrupt again. I'm receiving notice here that it's still on the screen of the second poll question. Can you just try moving the slides back and forth just to see if that might get it to unfreeze?
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times.
Okay, we seem to be experiencing a little technical difficulty here.
Let me just try to pause my screen. And then just refresh to see if you see a different screen.
No, I'm still seeing the second poll question, or the poll results, I mean.
Did we close that poll? Is Megan on?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Helena, maybe if you could open this deck on your computer and start driving, okay. And we'll try that.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Let me get this up here.
There we go. Okay, I think. Okay, so we talked
about. My screen?
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everybody. Next slide. And next slide. Okay. So how do we solve the problem of our spam issues? First, you want to be able to use whitelisted servers. So with our AI and our email platform, we actually use Amazon Web Services as our provider. And what's cool about them is they use rotating IP addresses that actually change based on spam feedback channels. So an email goes out on behalf of the dealership from your AI, and the AI notices, hey, this went into spam. It will then choose a different IP address to deliver another message to get into the inbox. The other thing about machine learning or artificial intelligence is it learns what type of content gets into the inbox at a higher rate, and is constantly changing its messaging to achieve that goal. All of the emails from the AI are text-based. They're super mobile friendly. They're short and sweet, to the point, and they're very engaging. So they look great on a mobile device, and many times the customer actually responds back from their mobile device via email. Again, we talked earlier about graphics and links. Content spurs engagement, not marketing, and not a one-way message out. So, when you look at some of the messaging that an AI can do, it's human-like. It's asking questions to engage. That's really the goal after you've landed a lead. And one of the things that we need to think about as an industry is we've spent the marketing dollars. The customer's taken the time to fill out a lead. Now we've converted them, yet we turn right around in many cases and start marketing back to them with our emails right out of the gate. That can be confusing at times, but it's also not very engaging. There is time to start remarketing that customer as the age of the lead grows. But in the beginning, that customer is expecting a live human conversation that the AI can provide. Next slide. So here's an example. This is actually one that I pulled from the Conversica dashboard of a live conversation on the 27th. And on the left in the blue box is actually the message that was sent by the AI. If you look at the bottom, the AI that this dealership chose, they chose to name her Shannon. Her title is Internet Sales Assistant. We would just call her an assistant because it's AI. But the customer, when they get that message, hi, Catherine, I wanted to let you know that Crystal is working on this and wants to call you, and we've anonymized that number, but it would give the actual number that was shown in the CRM or from the form fill. If the customer did not provide a phone number, she would then say, okay, instead of confirming the number, she would ask, is there a good number to reach you at? One of the goals of the AI is to get better contact information for your team to carry on live conversations after she's done her job. And when I say she, I'm going to be referring to the artificial intelligence. So the customer then responded back fairly quickly. I'm at work right now, so I can call when I leave or send you an email to call me when I leave. She gave up a phone number and then added another phone number to get in touch with her. Gave us some information about traded in their car. I'll let you know, this is a pretty hot lead. The parents have already done business with this dealership. And they're ready to engage and move forward through the funnel. So that's exactly what the AI's job is to engage the customer, have some conversation, and at the point it's ready to turn over to a human, the AI will do that. Next slide, please. So, that kind of solves the spam issue. The AI actually gets into the inbox about 98% of the time versus about 50% of the time from just a standard CRM. But let's talk about time to engagement, not time of response. And I'm going to jump down to the last bullet. Response times please the OEM. Every one of our dealerships has been hounded by the OEM with response time rates. It affects our back-end money. But really, for dealers that are killing it with internet and have become internet stores, they're more concerned about engagement time. When can I get that customer to start talking to me? So really, response times, yep, we've done a much, much better job in the industry, but the true performer is the engagement. So let's talk about how the AI actually does better at that. from our CRM, or maybe even if we're sending maybe copy and paste emails from a live person in the dealership, that does little to engage the customer. That's if it makes it to the inbox. We've got to be personal with our customers. One of the reasons they shop multiple dealerships, and again, the first to engage has a much higher chance of converting to an appointment than to a show and then to a sold vehicle. Well, one of the challenges we have with personal outreach is, we talked earlier, it can take up to 8 to 10 attempts to get the customer to engage. We simply don't have the bandwidth with our employees, and it's really not in their wheelhouse to continue that follow-up consistently, effectively, with the right message at the right time. So again, that's how AI can solve that issue. One of the other things we want to start looking at is, how do we measure success with time to engagement or time of response? Are we measuring the right KPI there? If we're still measuring response times, we're probably not up to speed yet. We've got to measure how long it takes us to get that customer engaged. Next slide. The third blind spot I'm going to talk about is the black hole of the CRM. And I think every dealer, once we get through this, will understand that it's probably happening in their store. Marking a completed task in the CRM doesn't mean we got what we wanted done. The objective is to get that customer to buy a car. Well, there are several steps to get them there. We've got to engage them first. We have to schedule an appointment. We have to get them to show. So marking a task complete in the CRM may look an employee look good at the end of the day when their daily work plan is fully checked off. But did they engage with customers, or are they just managing the checkboxes on their daily work plan? In a lot of cases, that's how it is. They've got their list to do today. They get to their list. They think they did their job. They didn't make multiple attempts. They didn't call back an hour later. Again, AI through email can do that. They can continue to follow up. The objective of the AI is to engage, not check a box. So she'll keep doing that until that happens. We talk about, canned emails or leaving a voicemail. It doesn't really move to the next stage of engagement, yet we do it every day in our dealerships. Here's the biggest thing. With AI, when we do engage with customers, the AI actually reads the responses and figures out what the customer is saying. So we now have a feedback channel of customers that engaged. Maybe the AI flipped it over to a salesperson or BDC agent. The AI then will follow up a couple days later and say, hey, did you get everything you needed? If the customer says no, then we've got what we call a lead at risk. And we track that. So now you've got this partition of people that are raising their hand saying they want to do business with you, but they're not getting what they asked for. The CRM cannot tell you that. You actually need the responses from the customer, and then that needs to be escalated to a manager. So that real-time visibility into the customer's feedback, not the employees checking of the box. Now you've got true visibility in what's going on. So let's go to the next slide. Here's a dashboard of Conversica's AI. There's a lot of great data here that you can't get anywhere else. It's all real time. I actually took this as a snapshot of a real store yesterday. Up in the top right in the box, you'll see some KPIs or key performance indicators. The first one we look at is engagement rate. How many of the customers that submitted a lead was the AI, Conversica, able to engage in a two-way conversation? In this particular store, the AI has engaged 44% of the customers by herself. She's also been able to collect another 554 better contact phone numbers for those leads. That's a huge asset for your team in being able to make the dials and get a hold of the customer. She has sent 51,000 messages to get that engagement. Now, here's the kicker. This is one of the big blind spots that we need to pay attention to while using an AI that we can't get anywhere else. When the AI, again, engages that customer and turns it over to a salesperson or agent, she's going to shut off for a day or two and then follow back up to see if that lead got what they wanted. In this particular store, again, a live dealership, 40% of the customers that the AI engaged said nobody got back to them or nobody got them the information that they had asked for. That's a huge number. So that's kind of a black hole of customers that want to do business and for whatever reason, we're not getting back to them. A lot of GMs, when they see that number, kind of freak out. They'll jump in their CRM and say, thinking that the salesperson, the agent, didn't get the customer what they asked for. Well, guess what? They probably did send an email, but the customer never saw it. So that 40% lead at risk actually is comparable to that 47% spam rate that we talked about earlier. So if you got a spam issue, which we probably do, you're going to have a high leads at risk score. So we have to find another way to get a hold of that customer to get them what they asked for. At the bottom, the AI actually can, in the green, where you see the green arrow, the AI can actually sort your customers by sentiment or actually where they're at in the lead funnel. So in this store, 301 are hot leads. These are customers that are asking the right questions, saying the right things. 69 are customers who said, no, nobody ever got back to me. 37 have been escalated to a manager to review as they need to get involved. So now you've got a way to sort all of your customers with the customer's feedback, not the boxes in the CRM, to get a true snapshot of what's going on in the dealership. This is priceless information, folks. Next slide. Now back to that kind of the black hole. Conversica's AI provides you with that safety net. Here are a list of all the leads, and if we were able to scroll down, there would be quite a few. You can actually click through those as a manager and do a save a deal meeting each morning and talk about the customers that engaged, they're low in the funnel, yet for whatever reason, whether it was spam or maybe somebody in the dealership did drop the ball, you can go through that list and find those deals that probably will go elsewhere because the customer's not getting what they want. Next slide, please. So again, the solution, when we talk about all these blind spots, we haven't been able to fix these problems until now, until advanced technology like AI. It launches, it scales, it's a beautiful solution. The other thing about Conversica Assistant is it doesn't prejudge your lead sources. It works each lead the same to buy or die stage. Obviously changes the messaging each time so the customer never knows that it's AI. But it also follows up with each engagement to make sure the customer receives everything they asked for. And then you get true performance by employee based on feedback, not check boxes. So on the next slide, we can actually dive into how that safety net can be used on a day-to-day basis. So if you look to the left, these are all the reps in your dealership, whether they're salespeople or BDC agents. And the green box are the number of customers that responded back per rep saying, no, nobody ever got back to me. This does a few things for you. Again, visibility you can't get anywhere else. It doesn't match up to the CRM checkbox. This is actually the customer saying, no, I didn't get what I asked for. When you start showing this to your team and doing some coaching and mentoring on this, one, you've identified who needs help, but two, they now know that you're watching. And guess what? Their performance gets better. They don't drop the ball as often. You'll also maybe find that you do have maybe a worse spam problem than you thought you did, and you need to find ways to solve that. The AI can do it, but you're also going to need to be sending content on your own. So maybe you use a Gmail address to send emails to those customers that aren't getting it from your CRM. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the fourth blind spot. This is probably one that we all know about, but again, just haven't been able to solve it until now, again, when you have an AI that can actually do it. When we look at leads, we have some lead sources. I hear a lot of people at dealerships talk about maybe their OEM third-party leads. They get a lot of them. They're a lot of work. They don't get great results from them. Maybe you're buying leads from a source that maybe sells them 3 or 4 times to other dealers. AI will work every one of those lead sources again without prejudging to try to engage them. One of the things that we look at because of the visibility that the AI can provide is what is your true effective lead cost? Not what are you paying for the lead, what is the lead actually costing you? So here's an example, and I made the math simple. We're just gonna use 100 leads to start with. If you're paying $30 per lead and only 50% of the leads that you buy engaged, your true effective lead cost is $60. The other issue you have is labor cost, human capital. How much are those poor performing, engaging lead providers, how much does that cost you an employee cost to work the non-engaging leads? It's a big number. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's kind of the solution, especially from a marketing standpoint, maybe even a staffing standpoint. Because the AI measures true engagement of each lead source and every lead, you can now look at every lead provider that you have and see what their engagement percentage is. A lot of dealers use this as a tool when maybe AutoTrader or Cars.com comes in and talks to them about their leads. The dealer can now provide, hey, I'm buying your leads, but only 35% of them will ever respond back to me. That's a true number. That's the number from the customers responding back and engaging in a two-way conversation. So now when you look at your marketing spend and when you choose your providers, you're going to want to look at engagement percentage by provider. And if you've got a low performing, low percentage engaging lead source, not only is it an expensive lead, but it's also expensive from a human capital standpoint. So now when you start moving maybe some of the lower performing dollars up to the higher performing lead sources by engagement rate, you can really dial in the effectiveness of your lead sources and increase the quality of your leads. Next slide. And number 5, I think we know the landscape of digital retailing is changing rapidly. The internet has done a lot for our dealership. 5, 6 years ago compared to now, think about where you were from an advertising standpoint, processes in the dealership, tools that you use. A lot has changed. I'm just going to talk about the last 2 years. This is a study put out this year by NADA. In 2015, the average dealer spent 27.8% on internet marketing. In 2017, just 2 years later, that number jumped to 55.4% towards internet. Folks, we are becoming internet stores. Whether we like it or not, or whether we're going to admit it, we are internet stores. So our customers' behavior has changed. They want it now. They've got better tools. What are we doing to change to keep up with that? Next slide, please. So the solution to the rapidly changing, now it's almost monthly, you've got to, again, have an advanced technology that can manage at scale all of your processes and never drop the ball, and also give you huge visibility in exactly where every customer is at their stage and how your employees are performing. So whether or not you're currently using AI in your dealership to manage your customers, you probably will be in a very short period of time just to be competitive. Your customers are already using AI. Our vehicles have it in them now. We've got it in smart homes. We've got it on our phones. We use it when we do business with other people. AI is here. The cool thing about a good AI like Conversica is it's learned what the customers like in their conversation. So she'll actually talk to them using the highest engaging content. And then once it's time to hand over to an employee, she will alert that employee, hey, it's your turn. So this speeds up the time of engagement that we talked about before, but also that visibility into every customer being handled every time. And let's go ahead and just go to the next slide. So the sixth blind spot and our final blind spot today is what's happening in our service departments, what's happening in fixed ops. I think everybody would agree fixed ops, our strategy is probably about a decade behind our variable or our sales side from a technology standpoint, even from a marketing standpoint. But it's becoming critical that we do better in fixed because of the decreasing margins on the front end. Become very competitive landscape in new cars. And I think we all know this. We have to get better in fixed, but how do we do it? And we'll talk about that. The other problem with fixed or service is our lead flows are inconsistent. I mean, I still talk to dealers that the service leads come in and they get sent to an email inbox to the service manager, and rarely do they get touched. Or maybe it goes into the CRM and it's up to maybe sales to flip the service lead over to service. So we've got an issue there as well. The way we've tried to address these issues in the past is we market to our existing customers kind of as a Hail Mary, or we haven't been able to scale personal outreach to the thousands of records in our DMSs. It's just nearly impossible. I mean, if you've got a DMS with 8,000 to 10,000 records in it, how can you possibly do the 8 to 10 outreaches it takes to engage them with people in your dealership? So with AI, you can now scale personalized outreach to every customer in your DMS at the right time with the right message. And then the AI reads those responses and does the right next thing. So now you've got this platform that keeps your customer engaged in service, increases retention, and gives you great visibility into what's working and what's not. So we're seeing a lot of customers that have adopted AI and fixed ops pretty much get away from traditional media because that media doesn't work anymore. The results have diminished tremendously, and it's very expensive. If there is a dealership that does personal outreach, maybe with a larger BDC, it's usually the one and done. They call, leave a voicemail, hey, it's time for service. Maybe they send an email one time to remind the customer. We've proven in our studies that it takes more than that to engage customers. So, the one and done doesn't work anymore. The other thing about the AI is it doesn't offer discounts. It engages at such a much higher rate than media does without discounting. So you see your effective labor rate go up when you use AI as well to keep your customers attached to the dealership. So that's pretty much the 6 that we're going to cover today. Let's go on to the next slide, which I think we do have one more slide. Here's the dashboard of our service assistant, and the segments that the AI can go after and do it by itself once it's plugged into your DMS are first service appointment. So the AI will know when a vehicle was sold and then will automatically reach out at the appropriate interval to get them in for their first service visit. The next service visit is based off of the AI knowing when the last RO was closed, and then starts reaching out with that personalized message again for the consecutive visits they have. The other cool thing about the AI is it will reach out in a human manner again after the RO is closed to make sure that visit went well. And if not, we'll notify a manager that, hey, we've got a problem customer. Let's get this solved before the factory survey goes out. Another big challenge that we've always had scaling personal outreach is recalls. Those lists are huge that we get from the factory. The AI can talk to each customer on that list as if it was one-to-one. And then abandonment, customers that haven't been in over 12 months or longer, depending on your brand, she's able to engage them at a very high rate, kind of like, we miss you kind of conversations, but it's persistent and kind. This is a dealership, again, I took a snapshot yesterday that had been on the service AI for since July of last year, so almost a year. They've been able to close an additional 700 ROs from the AI's outreach. Now, a lot of dealers would say at this point, all those customers would have came in anyway. So we're very conservative in taking credit for those ROs. Several things have to happen. One, we have to identify that the customer falls into one of those segments. 2, we have to have a valid email address for them. 3, we actually have to have a two-way conversation with that customer. Then the customer has to say, yes, I want to service my vehicle. And lastly, that customer has to close an RO within 30 days. So that 701 is true lift. The other cool thing about the AI is once the customer engages and says, yeah, I need to do service, she can then serve up your AI or your scheduling link to schedule that appointment for the customer without any touch from the dealership. When you start looking at the number of messages she's sending, 15,000 customers, that could bury a dealership if she didn't help facilitate the appointment setting process. And I think that's our last slide. Let's go ahead and go to the next. Yeah, so let's go ahead and open up the questions. Helena?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and if you have any questions, feel free to just type that into the panel there. We'll give you a few minutes to enter any questions that you may have. Okay, we have one. It's actually more of a comment than a question. This person saying, not sure I want a computer talking to my customers. John, what are your thoughts on that in terms of, having a computer sound, maybe artificial, or it sounds like a chat bot and not like a real person? What are your thoughts when it comes to that?
So that's a common perception or question a lot of people have when they first start identifying an AI or learning about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, there's many different types. The type we're talking about is what we call conversational artificial intelligence or conversational AI. And, ours is about 10 years old. Now, when you look at somebody, if they were to develop an AI today, they've got 10 years to catch up with our AI experience and learning. So, our AI sounds like a live person. It does a better job than a live person. We actually track the number of people that respond back and say, hey, is this a robot? It's less than 1% of the time that actually occurs. I think the number is 0.002. So really, they don't know that they're talking to a computer, and they're actually thrilled that somebody cares about them enough to continue following up with them.
Okay, great. Yes, actually, this person is asking, 11 attempts in what period of time? 7 days, 30 days, or 60 days?
Is that from the 4 Ps, or is that from?
I believe that was in the personal extend outreach.
Yeah, I think that's a question around the 4 Ps, Helena.
Oh, it is. Okay. So we're actually saying, let me go back here. So this is 11, contact attempts. Okay, yeah, we're actually saying that within 2 weeks. So that's in line with best practices research is to make at least 8 to 12 contact attempts in a 2-week time period.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's see. There's another one. Okay, this is actually a big question here. Do I get rid of my BDC?
No. We've actually had stores that did, maybe some smaller stores that had a 2 or 3 person BDC. Once they saw the results of the AI, either repurpose those folks or just change the way that they worked with the AI. The beauty of our AI is it's just like a human being. So whether you run a BDC or not, she can adapt to the processes that you find that are best practices in your dealership. So the answer, the long answer is no.
All right, great. Okay, and one more question here is we're seeing is, does this replace my CRM?
That's another common question. Again, because it's like a human, it actually manages and works with your CRM very well. She pulls data from your CRM and actually pushes her work back into the CRM. So, it works very well alongside a CRM and really doesn't replace it. I see a couple questions. One about pricing. We're going to provide an email address if you have questions about getting signed up in just a second.
Okay, we're going to just take this. Sorry, one last question I saw that just popped in. Yes, as John mentioned, I see that pricing question too, so I'll provide John's email where you can ask him directly any questions that you may have after this webinar. And this last question that we're taking today is, I have my BDC department making 3 calls in the first day with 1 email on day 2 and the opt-in for text on the second day. Don't we want to contact as often as possible until they answer or say stop? That's a great question.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the AI does. We'll continue to follow up with that customer, again, until they buy or die. And based on the conversations or engagements with the customer, the follow-up changes. So, again, it's very human-like. She doesn't drop the ball, and she continually works those customers, again, until they say stop or opt out.
Perfect. All right. So that is all the time that we have for today. Thanks again for joining us. And if you do have additional questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to reach out to John directly. His email address is johnru@conversica.com. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you got some great insights and some actionable steps that you can take with you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.